Hello, welcome to Building Renaissance Leaders. I'm your host, Victor Vogel. Well, we got quite a show going on for you today. Um, I want to make sure that I am everywhere I need to be right here, so I'm going to take just a moment to make sure everything is set up like it's supposed to be set up. And so, in doing that, I am going to Instagram Live and I am going to um, YouTube Live and it looks like LinkedIn Live. So uh, let's try to do this a little bit earlier, but it appears for some reason my mic didn't come on. I wasn't checking it, I was into doing the content. And sure enough, I went a long time before I realized I didn't have a microphone on. So apologize for that, but here I am again live this evening. Uh, and we're going to try this one more time because I think it's important you get the information. Now, what are we talking about tonight? Building Renaissance Leaders is the name of the podcast. And what we're talking about is Renaissance Leadership Odyssey. So, what are we going to be doing in that process? Well, we're going to be talking, first of all, a little bit about why I named it Renaissance Leadership Odyssey. And I just didn't pick something out of the air. This pretty much represents what I think's going on. Secondly, we're going to talk about why we need a leadership paradigm switch, which is pretty much what Renaissance Leadership Odyssey is all about. And we're going to go about the business of talking about leadership paradigms and why the paradigm we have now isn't working and why we need to change it. So obviously there is a why, or you wouldn't try to just create something out of the thin air for no purpose. Uh, in addition to that, we're then going to talk about what the Renaissance Leadership Odyssey program consists of and how it's a little different than the existing program that we have on today. So, uh, here's yeah, well, and I guess we ought to cover also how we're going to how we're going to go about doing that. It's a more like an outline of an operations plan, and then how we're going to lay that out. We'll cover a lot of things in the process. So that's where we're heading this evening. Uh, I think during that period of time, we're going to find out a whole lot of information about leadership that's going on today. I think anybody who's looking around at leadership today probably understands it's in trouble. And I'm hoping, I'm just really hoping that we can grasp a hold of this and begin to make some changes that will end up helping us in the long run. So, in this podcast, this is all these podcasts. Let me take a minute here and sort of explain all of these podcasts are really focused on putting material in front of you that is about leadership and the type of leadership we're going to need in the future. Not what we have now, but what we're going to need for the next decade or two to really grasp a hold and control and guide things like AI technology and other issues like that that are going on out there today. So, uh, The podcasts are going to be educational primarily. They're not entertaining, they're educational. They're there for you to be able to learn. And I'll cover how we're going to use those in just a few minutes. This is, like I said, going out live on Instagram. I see a picture back there. It looks like I'm on Instagram, so that's good. Uh, we're live on Instagram. We're live on LinkedIn. Although you won't be able to put up any chat or questions because I'm coming via eCam and LinkedIn hasn't synced up with um, eCam yet. So you probably get your best experience either going through, well, probably your best experience overall is going ahead and going to my YouTube channel, which is right there on the left hand side of the screen. It's Building Renaissance Leaders. Uh, and when you get there, go to the podcast section and you'll see it live on the screen right there. So that's going to be your best program. This also, when we're done, a couple of days after we're done, uh, I tend to add chapters to these so it makes it easier to go back and review it. But I recommend you watch it all the way through a couple of times. Maybe watch it one time, come back a couple of weeks later and watch it again. You're going to pick up some information or some ideas out of it that you didn't pick up the first time. It happens every time when I tell people to do this, they do it. They always come back and say, yeah, I did pick up something that I could use out there. So that's what it's aimed to do. It's aimed to help you. All these are aimed at helping you. I'm not looking for likes. I'm not looking for um, to become a YouTube influencer. I'm simply looking to provide some information out there that can help people improve their leadership capabilities. Um, we're doing the chats or the questions, if anybody happens to come up, I don't know that they will now, but if you come up on chat and I'd like you to just chat with questions. If you have a comment, that's fine. You can put in there. If I think there's something we can use, I might mention it. But I'm not watching the chats. I'm focusing on the content that we're doing. Uh, if also standard protocol applies, don't know nothing out of discolored or threatening or violence oriented or vulgar or any of those kinds of things. Please stay away from that. Simply questions or comments that would be helpful to the subject and not off the subject. We're not looking for, especially this time of the year, no, nothing to do with politics in these comments. Just, they'll just kind of disappear quickly. You have to excuse me, I have a little bit of allergies. They're high here in Oklahoma. I'm broadcasting out of Yukon, Oklahoma, about 15 miles west of Oklahoma City on I 40. So, the crossroads of America. Uh, so, that's pretty much it. I would say this I'm going to talk uh, a little bit about the subscription program that I'm doing right now. It's under Buy Me a Coffee. You can take your phone and put up there, put it on photo and just hold it up there, and it'll give you the website to go to. The membership program is designed to put some additional stuff I'm doing um, into an area that you can get to it. If you think about these monthly podcasts, they're going to be uh, I guess I would call them a digital library. One a month over 12 months is 12 hours. That's 24 hours of really um, uh, pretty strong, powerful information in a lot of areas that are going to be focused on helping you become a good Renaissance leader. In addition to that, and when this is done, a couple of days after it's done, and I put the chapters to it, and I posted in all the social media content and send it out to some people like chambers of commerce and small business associations. Uh, these those will be available. The podcast will be available on my YouTube channel, and within my YouTube channel, I'm beginning to build a community. So I've set that up so you can actually. Oh, these allergies are horrible. Actually, go in and uh, sit, participate in the community, ask questions, get help, all kinds of things that we're going to try to set up in that community. That's coming. I'll probably have that up and running sometime by the end of March into April, and hopefully we'll have some ongoing increased development in that area. Now, in addition to this podcast, I put out a newsletter that has a summary. It's kind of a summary of everything we do in this podcast. But then I take any questions or comments that I get either during this podcast or questions that I might get through other comments, the YouTube channel, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever I post these after I put them out there. Uh, so I give that about 2 weeks. And then I take the information I get and I do another question and answers podcast. And I do that live too. So if you happen to catch that and you want to jump in there and ask some questions while we're on live, then we would definitely be looking strictly at the chat and trying to draw questions and responses from that information. So just so you know, that's all going to be available and stuff we're going to be doing here. There's a lot of other things. For example, we put, I have some books out there, and we put these books into these. I think Dare to Be Become a Renaissance Leader really gives you the gist of what this is all about. But it was an introductory book to begin to probe people's mind and get them thinking about it. The other book down there, the interpersonal communication book, is a book of 40 years of using communication, developing communication with people to help them become better leaders. That's pretty much outlined almost like a checklist kind of format, but it's not, but uh, it's got everything I ever use to help somebody become an effective leader. The book you have behind you talks about how to select Renaissance leaders in the future, sort of a preliminary guideline. And then there's a book coming out in a couple of weeks, which will be going into depth of all of this. I do all these in ebook format because in that I might drop a link or a video or something like that that I think that's helpful. Primarily, I try to stay with links, but occasionally I'll put a video, like I have a 4-minute primer on communication that I put in most of my books somewhere, because it helps people understand what happens when two people talk to each other. And it's a lot more than you think. You just don't get trained on communication. That's the problem. We get grammar, we get sentence structure, pronouns, verbs, adverbs, all that kind of stuff. But nobody talks about something like the meaning of the message is in the mind of the receiver. See, understanding that concept has a lot to do with how you should formulate your questions or your directions and how you should present them to and to who you're presenting them to. So there's a lot in there about that kind, and it's pretty well laid out, and I think it's well worth it. Now, the deal is that one's on Amazon. Becoming a Renaissance Leader is on Apple Books. The other one's in my membership area, in the post area, and it's free. But also, the communication book is in there. If you're a member of Renaissance Leadership member, you also be able to flip through that book whenever you want to do it. That's kind of handy having this kind of information because not only do you have the book, but you have the links and everything else readily available. So if you run into a problem and you're stumbling around, you can let's say you've got a problem employee, you have trouble communicating with them, and it's a kind of a conflict situation. and you kind of want to refresh your memory about how to handle it most effectively, you literally can take out your smartphone, go into the Buy Me a Coffee main page as a member, go into that book right there, so look and see where the chapter is, turn to that page, and review what I say about conflict management, communication, and how to make it happen effectively. And then that might give you some insights about how to approach that conflict problem. That's right there on your smartphone, right there when you need it. It's not something you have to carry around in the book or go home and get on your computer or whatever. That's one reason I put this into a subscription program, because that platform allows me to put a lot of this information and have it available to you, the people who are helping me with this program and wanting to pursue Renaissance leadership. That gives you access to a lot of information. The other reason I have it there is these things I'm telling you are the same kinds of things that I did for billion-dollar organizations, some Fortune 500 billion-dollar organizations, where I was actually helping them design and build and manage and implement and maintain and all of that, these kinds of programs to help people become better, to help organizational cultures become less toxic. All of this stuff I was doing for billion-dollar organizations, some of them international, some domestic. And the thing about these kinds of programs, these are programs that you're talking 25, 50,000, hundreds of thousands, up into the millions of dollars to implement in those corporations. So I was one of those guys that did that kind of stuff. I was in there as a consultant, and my fee structure was extremely well, not extremely, but fairly high. It was competitive for the market, but that's pretty high. It's like lawyers' fees if you want to compare them. So you figure if you're in there 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week times that rate times, you're getting into tens of thousands of dollars a week to get things done. Now, corporations feel like this was worth it, and we'll talk about that in just a minute when we talk about why we need to change the leadership paradigm. I've got some data on that for you. And so that kind of quality, that kind of level of leadership development just isn't available to small business. Small business probably doesn't have the money to have a consultant come in and work like that in an organization, but they need access to the material. So what I'm trying to do is put the material together in a way that if you read it, it was like I was there explaining it to you. And you can, it's in practical terms. There's some examples and things like that, and that allow you to take the information and actually go use it right there on the spot. So I kind of am structuring everything that I'm doing in this Renaissance Leadership Odyssey that way. Now, Renaissance happened in the 12th century in Europe. It came after a very, very, what they call the Dark Ages, a very dark period where a lot of brutality and strict, stringent, sarcastic culture, mostly theocracy based around religion, and people were trying to break out of that. When this time came, they broke out of it with, looking at new things. That to them it was science and literature and art and music and a whole different concepts, philosophy, and a lot of things like that that people were feeling like they could express openly, talk about, challenge the status quo, see how things are different using science and evidence-based information. Um, and that was creating a lot of excitement, a lot of creativity, a lot of innovation. It's also creating a lot of resistance, a lot of problems with it. So uh, the Renaissance was that kind of a time period. And that's kind of how I see where we are now. A lot of quick, fast things happening, things that we hadn't even thought about and considered, and they're breaking and they're hitting and they're creating they're creating things where people are excited and want to jump in and learn more and get at it. And then we also have people who are going, wait a minute, grab a hold of this. It's dangerous. There's fearful. There's resistance in it. And how you cope with all of that, how you take all this newness and innovation and try to fit it into a world where you're trying not to lose control is a difficult leadership task. And there's a lot of leadership and ideas about leadership and philosophy that came out of the 12th century. And I think there's going to be a lot like the Renaissance Leadership Odyssey that comes with that. So that's why I chose the word Renaissance. Uh, in terms of Odyssey, Odyssey is really defined as a journey. It's an eventful journey, full of excitement and wonders, etc. And so that's kind of how I feel like we're going to go with this Renaissance leadership program, because it is kind of like a journey. It's not going to be quick and 4 hour block of instruction and a webinar. It's stuff you have to truly get engaged in and engage with a lot of different people in a lot of different areas that are experts to help you get where you need to be in the future. It's not a short term project, it's not a short term program. It's going to take you some time under your belt to get this quality of leadership, sort of an elite leadership arena under your belt, and to to feel like you have it in an area where you can use it. So that's why I um, chose Renaissance and why I chose Odyssey. It's going to be a journey. It's going to be a trip, a cool trip. And yeah, the Renaissance is the newness and the vitality and the challenges and all of the things you're going to have to deal with that they were dealing with. And same kind of stuff in the 12th century, the newness of it, and how you have to adapt to that and change. It was different in the 12th century than it was in the Dark Ages. It's going to be different now compared to where we were back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. So that's kind of the rationale of where we're going with this. So what I would like to do is jump into the why, so to speak. Why is it I would be pushing a paradigm change? What is it that you um, need to know or understand about leadership from that standpoint? And so I want to first maybe come at it from a database perspective. And so there are a lot of companies out there that do research, and there's some companies that are consulting companies. There's Bain, and there's Price Waterhouse and McKinsey, and several consulting companies who do research on a regular basis. Then they'll do a white paper and put out what they found, etc. I always tend to be a little skeptical about consulting companies doing research on areas that they're working and trying to get contracts in. But there are other companies like Gallup and Pew and other universities and government institutions that aren't really out to get a contract with a company, but are simply putting the data out there so that it makes sense. Now, so I picked out a couple of pieces of data to kind of give you an example that point to why I am focused on this the way I am. And so I thought you might appreciate that data. First of all, there's this leadership cost. Uh, Back in the 80s, mid 80s, early 90s, and then on, we were really kind of outsourcing leadership development and leadership selection for that matter. And that was creating search firms, it was creating uh, like the consulting firms were now getting into providing leadership development as a product like a program that you go to um, and and then they had certain consulting models that they would try to sell relative their particular model in helping leaders become more effective. A lot of companies developing all kinds of assessment tools to help you do that as a company, all managed and contracted from the outside. And the dilemma with that is it turned into an industry. And it turned into, so when we monetized it, we kind of lost control of it, to be honest with you. And so what you see here is how much we tend to spend on the training industry every year from, and I think they went back as far as 2010. Now you are not looking at something here that's year by year by year. There's 5 years in between one, there's 3 years, and then there's 1 year. But it can give you an idea of the trend. So in 2010, we were spending a little less than maybe $275 billion. Those numbers on the left are $1 billion on training. And a lot of that was centered around leadership training. That seemed to be the hot topic or hot button. Some of it was into systems, some of it was into process, those kinds of things. The Six Sigmas and things like that were coming out also. Uh, so what you see here isn't all just leadership, but it's a pretty good indicator. You could probably pull out leadership and see it having the same trend as what I'm trying to say. So when you look at it in 2015, we were over 300 and probably 25 billion. Then we went up to 335 or 40 billion. And then the next month we went up, say, maybe another $10 billion. I mean, the next year we probably went up another $10 billion. So we're literally increasing the spending on training in the billions of dollars accumulatively over the years. So it kept building, it kept growing, it kept happening. But then you have to say, okay, were you getting anything out of this? And that is part of the other part of this research. This is the performance due to leadership training. So for those people who took leadership training, and that's not every leader in every company, but for those who did, that these billions of dollars were spent on, leadership behaviors change. Probably, let's say it changed for the positive. Um, it doesn't say that here, but you can probably make that as an assumption. It appear pretty accurate. Um, up almost 30% of the people who went through training, their behaviors change. Now, when you see charts like this, everybody goes, yeah, leadership's doing great. But the reality, if you read this report, and I'll put this in the description so you can do your own analysis on it, but there's a segment in there where it says, yeah, people were saying leadership's really good, it's making a difference. But then the data wasn't necessarily indicating it, and it says that in the report. And the behaviors, when you look at this, almost 30, not quite, maybe 28% of the people, but But if you think about it, then that means a little over 70% of your people who took leadership behavior training didn't change their behaviors at all. 70%. So, and if you look at learning, in other words, did they learn something? Did they learn something they didn't know before? Something that they felt useful or didn't know before? And that was a little less than leadership behavior change. Then, if it was organizational outcomes, so organizational outcomes are those master goals, the mission, the objectives of the mission, those goals, those wider ranging goals that organizations look at for like growth and return on equity and all those kinds of financial things. And the answer was about the same as leaders who learn. So, organizational outcome from a leader's production or retention and all that kind of stuff. They you know they were probably for those who took this course. They probably had about a 28% increase in performance and organizational outcomes. But again, that means around 70% of people who took it didn't for the most part. And if you look at overall job performance from leaders, then it goes down, it begins to go down quite a bit. Down now we're down just slightly below 20% of the people who took this program had an over job performance increase. Their performance was rated well. And now, if you look at the subordinate outcome, which is the primary objective of leadership when you think about it's like um, you're you're going through all of this training, and it's designed really to help you get your subordinates as a team, as a group, bought into the organization and performing in a way that helps them be highly successful throughout this program, throughout the company's year, from the programs that are taught. And that is under 10%. Under 10% of the employees of people or of leaders who took these programs saw any major performance improvement. So if you think about that, that's a pretty significant comparison. We have a lot of growth in spending relative to um, billions of dollars of increases in leadership training, and, and the performance is inversely correlated. In other words, if you held those two things up and looked at the lines, one's going up, the other one's going down. And over the years, over several years, over a couple of decades. So I want to make that point. This isn't happening within the last couple of years, it's happening now. And it's happened several decades before. So you begin to ask, what's going on here? Why did that happen? I mean, I retired 18 years ago. Again, I'm sorry about the allergies, but I'll try to get through this best I can. But I retired about 15 years ago, maybe 18 now. And so I was just thinking, I, I, I would like to find out what's going on, after 15 or 18 years and all this innovation, everything's going on. Obviously, things ought to be great. And when I started talking to people, it was a situation where they were telling me during just casual conversations, like over 5 or 6 or 7 years, I talked to a lot of people in coffee shops. I talked to a lot of people in restaurants and lounges and bars and park benches and other things. And when you have a casual conversation, you begin the conversation a lot of time with what kind of work do you do, and then you can that opens the door to ask the question, well, how is it? How is that company to work for? And when I started work in the early 70s, started with a pretty predominant company. And that company was Electronic Data Systems, was Ross Perot. And during that period, that was a prime company to work for. Everybody wanted to work for Ross and EDS. And you felt good about working for it. You felt like you were a family, and you felt, there was an air of a positive reputation associated with you belonging to that company. So you told people you worked for them, and you were excited. And you enjoyed working for them. And so that's something we've lost over the decades. That's something we've lost, and we're nowhere close to that now. And this data I'm going to show you now, let me see if I can bring it up for you here. If I can. to this one. Look at the subordinate outcomes. This is generally speaking, from training. This is the kind of outcome you were getting. You were getting considerably less outcome. Now I am explaining to you can see that people, they're dissatisfied, they're struggling with what their roles and jobs are, and the whole idea of, am I in the right job, doing the best job I know that I'm capable of doing? And the answer is no on all those cases. That is taking employee engagement down. That is a direct correlation to leadership. That's squarely on the shoulder of leadership. That's the job of leaders, is to make all those decisions correctly so that employees will perform effectively. So obviously something we've been doing for decades is not working. That leadership that we're spending more and more billions of dollars on every year is not turning the kind of performance and engagement we need out of people. Even when we're not in a crisis situation like the pandemic or the recession of 2008. See, it isn't the crisis scenarios heighten it, but the fact is we have not been capping above 30 or 35% of most anything, except that one area for a while. Did we know what was expected of us? But then that began to teeter. It was having a downward trend. So that's just some things that I think is important for you to understand about leadership and the impact that leadership can have on organizations right here. Oh boy, allergies. When you have allergies in Oklahoma, you just don't have a little bit. I mean, the wind's going at 25 miles an hour. The stuff is blowing in the air. There's no trees or a lot of underbrushing to stop it. It's pretty flat out here. And so you get hit really hard with allergies around here. Right now, my nose is driving me crazy, and I apologize for that. But again, let's move on through the process. So why do we need a change in paradigm for leadership and leadership development? It's because it's not working, ladies and gentlemen. It hasn't worked for decades. And we keep pushing it. The stuff we were teaching in 1972 when I came on board in leadership um, is the same stuff today that I see scrolling through LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or any of the Twitter or any of the formats of social media. You get all these memes and they have all of these quotes and they all are talking about the stuff that I've been learning. In fact, I've made comments on them saying, "Hey, this is stuff I was doing 50 years ago. What do you got this new? What are you doing to fix this? What are we doing to fix it? What are we doing to change this?" And it's not a lot right now, which is kind of disheartening. If you've been in the business, you come back 16, 17 years later, and not only is it not improving, my God, it's getting worse in the project. So that's some of what is bothering me a little bit about leadership today, and why I was thinking, what we need to do something different. We need to shake this up a little bit, not blow it up, like some people profess to make change by blowing things up. You don't have to blow it up. You just have to figure out what the issues are and make some changes in them. So that's what we're doing. Um, okay, so that brings me to what's in the Renaissance Leadership Odyssey program. It's really based on three pillars of activity. And the first pillar is uh, something that we have literally missed for 4 decades. We just haven't spent any time doing this anywhere I can see to the extent we needed to. And a lot of people throw up resistance to that, but the data pretty much is speaking here. The What we have not done is we have not spent time working on the individual leader. We have not spent much time helping the leader understand who they are, where they came from, what are the things that are impacting how they think and what they do, that relates to whether or not you would be a good leader based on the skill sets that you have to learn. So, leaders are being placed in positions without anything like this happening. And consequently, when they get in there, it's like, well, they were a great salesperson. They were at for 5 years running, they were a top salesperson. I think you should be the sales manager. And that person, goes into that role thinking, wow, this is promotion and more money. But they don't think about, hey, I'm not going to be selling anymore. I'm going to be telling people how to sell or helping people to sell. And that may sound kind of fun and exciting and helpful in the beginning. But once you get in there and you don't have the tools or you don't have the personality for it, then you start failing and the sales are dropping because you're not out there driving the top sales figures. And these other people were being carried by you to some extent, but they never got any training or development around those areas that you thought were great and you used, but they just never picked up on. And it was your job now to get them there, and you don't quite know how to do that. And you don't know how to gain their trust because you were one of them and now you're their boss. So, and to some, most of the time when this happens, there's a little bit of resentment in the process. So, taking the time to find out who kind of fits the leadership profile that you set up for your corporation. And then taking the time to assess those people psychologically, not not for selection purposes, but to see if that is something they can handle and they would like to do and are fit to do. And this gives them the time to work through a development program. You're not selecting them. This is stuff they could use if they never took the program, if they never stepped into leadership. But it will give them pause to think whether leader is the thing I really want to do, or if I really want to go back and just bang it out in sales. And maybe you could just make me a training manager in sales and not the sales manager. You can make me a training specialist, or raise my salary, put me in charge of training, and I would work for the training manager. I just wouldn't be the training manager. And sometimes when you take the time to develop people like this, you begin to find out, hey, they really don't want that kind of a position or role. And there are a lot of people out there like that. They don't fit that mold. And what you do is you eliminate them. And so you have solved the problem of putting them in the position, which I often, hold on one second, putting them in the position uh, like I've often seen companies do in the past. And what you have is the problem where organizations uh, they have to deal with a poor performer. They have to demote them or fire them, and they lost a great salesman in the process, and they still have to replace the leadership role. I've seen that happen so many times because they didn't take the time to assess that person out. So I had people work for me in leadership roles for, I don't know, in the neighborhood of anywhere from 2 to 10 or 15 years. And these people were always developing under me. It was an ongoing process. Does this work? How does this work? Does this fit? They would learn something. They would decide, that's not the way I kind of how I want to handle it. Okay, tell me how you want it. And we would go through all of these processes time and time again, day in and day out. They had their freedom to kind of pick and choose and make their decision, but they also had the opportunity before they executed it to run it by me or someone or themselves between themselves and find out what others thought about that decision process. Something that doesn't often happen inside a hierarchically structured organization, particularly if you were talking to between an HR director and a director of finance. You know, how often do they get together and talk about leadership? Not, they don't have to, you don't have to try to tell the finance director how to run finance or vice versa. But leadership is something that crosses both across those barriers. It's a bond that has all leaders in that whole company united into trying to get one thing done right. Leadership. We should tell you, by the way, when you start defining the role of leadership, what, you have them functionally broken down based on span of control, those kinds of things, and categories like departments, uh, you know, finance, HR, etc. But uh, so getting that work done is one aspect. Getting employees to achieve all of that is one aspect. And measuring them on that is certainly acceptable because that's the responsibility you put them into. But uh, when you think about it, leadership is separate and alone from that. And I would profess to you that the CEO of that company and the informal group leader down here, both having influence over employees and getting them to do things because they want to help you do those, they're using the same concept. They are leaders. So supervisors, managers, things like that are not necessarily uh, the good measurements to define the leadership role. So hierarchically structuring a level and saying, well, a director has got one leadership responsibility. Yeah, in terms of span of control and those kinds of things, yes. In terms of leadership, no. Leadership is consistently the same between everybody. If you've got to get employees engaged, motivated, desirous to help you achieve all of those spans of control thing you're accountable for, that's leadership. That's the same there as it is as a CEO at the top of the organization. There may be some different thought processes associated with that, but it's the same principles. So we don't think that way. Right now, we're holding them accountable for not leadership, but just getting results. In fact, if you had a fairly toxic, if it was an uncomfortable, not totally toxic like sexual harassment or something like that, but an uncomfortable working environment, and you were delivering tremendous results, would you get fired faster? than if you had a great culture but you were missing your mark in results? Which one would you get fired at first? And I'm putting it to you in the hierarchical structure, the way we're thinking now, you would fire that person who's missing the results, but they're building your culture real well. And the dilemma with that is that's how you make the decision about leadership, which isn't leadership. It's a decision about delivering tasks. If somebody could build a culture and get that kind of thing working, maybe it's not the employees and the leaders are getting in the way of that being achieving those goals and objectives. And I often found that when I dug into the situations like this, because you would find in that scenario when you were talking with the employees and the leader, and they were all feeling good and saying, here's what's going on. They're putting a set of expectations on us that are unrealistic. So these are the dynamics that if a leader understands themselves, if they go through the psychological the psychological growth. I won't say assessment or evaluation because that's part of it, but that's not the purpose of it. The purpose of for you to get to see who you are, how you tend to think, what are the things that are getting in your way that keep you from having creative and innovative ideas that are holding you back and restricting you, and how to overcome those, because we now know through neuroscience, behavioral and cognitive behavior psychology and performance psychology and sociological psychology and sociology, we know that you can, in fact, make that happen. You can change that. Once you do that, what that allows you to do is to assimilate the information of all of the other skills you need to know. Assimilate it means take it in, be able to take in the masses of information. Then internalize that. Internalize it means you recognize it, you understand it, you grasp it, and then you personalize that, which means because you know it, you've grasped it, and you know yourself well enough through your development that we put you through that you can now personalize that so that it comes out the way you would normally discuss things. So you've enhanced your capability, you've enhanced your ability to get people to buy in and believe you, because now you come across sincere, and you start to build trust within your employees. They're then going to use that. When they see that happening, they empower people. That's what happens when they see that. They empower the leader to lead them because that's what they want. They want leadership. They don't want to do that. They don't want to have to make those decisions. They're perfectly acceptable and perfectly happy for them to simply do what they're told because they don't have the stress of making those decisions. And it meets their security and survival needs and even self achievement needs and the things that make you grow and learn. You can do all of that as an employee too. You don't have to do it as a leader. And so then they get this information. And so, what makes that work? The format that makes that work is the leader understanding who they are through psychological processing and development, and then using interpersonal communication to enhance the capability to interact effectively, and then taking that and turning it into the interpersonal aspects that you need to be able to understand to help you relate to people so that you are able to cope with all of the varying aspects of diversity and changes and all of the things that go on with a variety of different kinds of people working for you. And that's called emotional intelligence. So those are our three pillars that we're building this program on. psychology, sociology, and interpersonal communication. And for psychology, I'm professing that you ought to use Positive Intelligence by Shirzad Surmi. He's got a program that helps people move right into this stuff. Clear, simple, easy, you know, and there's plenty of people he's certified and trained to help you get there. Some of them have college or psychology degrees, some of them don't, but they're all experienced. Well, most of them are experienced, I would say. The ones I've talked to that I would recommend right now do. Okay. And then you have the same other side of emotional intelligence under Daniel Goleman's process, sort of the father of emotional intelligence, and all his training and programs and people who are doing that for him do the same thing. They give you a real good understanding of that. You put those two things together, you've got a good grip on who you are and how to interface with other people. And then if you can communicate effectively, if you know how to do that effectively, and that's the side that I tend to help people with, then you're able to put a powerhouse together, a really secret weapon, if you will, for leadership that really delves into people. Now, to do that, uh, the operation plan is you can do that as an individual without doing too much other than deciding that's you want to become have some of the characteristics and skill sets of a Renaissance leader. And you commit to that by finding ways to do the positive intelligence, following the process that I'm talking about positive intelligence, emotional intelligence, interpersonal communication. Get all that training under your belt and do that with people who are coaching and counseling who have actually been leaders in the past. Okay, that over a period of a couple of years, maybe 3 years, excuse me, you're going to turn into a pretty powerful leader, a pretty powerful leader who can handle things like changes in employee workforce activities and beliefs, changes in external factors impacting you in the world like AI, discomfort and conflict situations like we have now in our leadership of division, etc. Okay, but it won't help you with your allergies. That I know for sure. Okay, so that's generally what I've been trying to get over to folks is there is a model for that. Now, if you're a major corporation, you're going to want to take a look at looking at how you create within that hierarchical structure your leadership culture and leadership roles. And to do that, you're going to first want to do these programs yourself. Then you're going to want to bring all of that in house and establish some people who can do that for you throughout the rest of your organization down to the other employees. This is also going to give you an in house succession planning model that is the least expensive and the most productive way to find people to staff your leadership in the organization. I would go as far as to say you should never have to go outside to find a quality leader to replace one that's there. And you should never be concerned about letting a quality leader um, go, a quality leader go to another company because you don't have an open position, because you will have others in there that can cross over in a leadership perspective and possibly have the same skill set. So I would say that's something that you definitely ought to just consider. If you're a small business person, this is about you helping your people who maybe you only have three or four leaders in your organization, maybe a couple of supervisors and a lead waiter, and maybe a night manager. But you and all of them need to process this process, go through this process yourself and become a Renaissance leader focus. Then you're going to be using things like behavior-based assessments instead of performance reviews, which is a whole different dynamic. You're going to be able to assimilate all of that information and understand why it makes more sense than the annual performance review. And you can talk about how to use interpersonal communication to interact and get your people more excited, motivated, etc. So there's a lot involved in this. It's coming out in the book in terms of an operational model. If you're individuals, here's what I would do. If you're a major corporation, here's what I would do. If you're a small business, here's what I would do. And that's about pretty much all I can take tonight with these allergies knocking me out. I apologize for that a whole lot. But I will tell you this, all of this is going to be under uh, the vast majority of this information is going to be inside that subscription membership, Renaissance Leader subscription membership. You're going to have access to it. And you're going to have access to ask questions and things like that that you can get some responses to. And you also uh, are going to have access to the books. And you think about the amount of information that's coming along, it's going to be a large digital library, and it's going to be right on your smartphone when you need it, so you can go look up situations. And I'm going to talk about how in some of these question and answer sessions that I do that go behind or in this subscription program, I'm going to talk about how to do all this. So this is all. So if you have questions and comments, uh, a couple of weeks from now, when I broadcast this and edit it and put it back out, you're gonna have an opportunity to put comments and all those kinds of things. And then a couple weeks later, I'll do the podcast associated with that live again. And it's just going to be a question and answer response scenario. And so you have two podcasts really covering these topics really well. So questions people have about how would this work, how much would it cost, all that, those can be asked in the comments sections of any of the places that I distribute this to, even the audio versions in Apple, etc. And as I try to consolidate those questions, I'll respond to them. And the next live video podcast, I'll try to make that strictly that. There's a lot of information for $5 a month. Just a lot of information. It makes it affordable, and this is my goal. Make it affordable for individuals who can't afford to pay a consultant or a coach on an ongoing basis. It makes it affordable for them to get some of this information in a way that they can use it. And also, it makes it affordable for small businesses to buy into the kind of stuff that I was doing for $1 billion organizations. So that's about all I can handle with allergies tonight. I apologize very much for that. I know it's not pleasurable to watch me scratch my nose, but I just, I want to get the information out, but at the same time, I have to accommodate this thing that's attacking me called an allergy. Um, anyway, so I'll go take some more allergy medicine here in a minute. Thank you for watching. Thank you for the patience and putting up. And I hope this is exciting for you and that you'll take advantage of it. I definitely want you to subscribe to my YouTube channel and like that, and hit the notification bell because you'll know when stuff is coming up, this special and off, maybe one-off kind of stuff. That's all going into the subscription program. You'll know that when it's happening. So that's important stuff to happen. And also, these books are available on Amazon, the interpersonal communication books on Amazon. The Becoming a Renaissance Leader is on Apple Books, and they're all inside the subscription for basically just that $5 subscription that you have every month. You can go visit them anytime you want. You can't copy them, you can't take them with you, but as long as you're a member, you will have access to them. And if you happen to fall out one month and decide you want to come back in next month, you'll still have access to them. So I'm not trying to hide them from anybody or punish anybody who happens to need to not, pay a month subscription fee or something for some reason. Uh, so thanks for watching. I appreciate this very much. It's been uh, uh, a goal of mine for a long time to complete this and get it up and going. The subscription thing is very important to me because it allows me to keep, you know, recouping the money that I've poured into this thing over 6 years, but also to keep it going. And I'm hoping somebody else grabs this thing and maybe it'll send them in a different direction or whatever, but they grab it and they do something with it from that standpoint. So I look forward to it. Thanks a lot for watching and stay tuned. A lot more to come. Next month, we'll be talking actually a lot about women and how the role women play. And when you have low satisfaction levels and engagement levels like that, you need to optimize everybody you can get your hands on if you really want to outperform the rest of the world or outperform. And that's a benefit to people because the better that company performs, hopefully, if it's a renaissance based company like we're trying to profess, you're going to reap some of the benefits for that. You're going to reap some of the benefits for that. So Uh, thanks for watching. Until next time, I hope you have a good day and good evening. And again, once again, thank you very much for putting up with my uh, health issue here while I'm doing this podcast. Have a great day.